Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Every Day is Friday, the show where we dive into the stories and experiences from people from all walks of life. Today on the podcast, we have a special guest, Mark Kassa. He's an award-winning guitarist, and he's in the band Slight Return, and he's even voted in the Grammys. So he's worked with some incredible artists and also played at some amazing venues. We're going to be diving into his journey, the music industry, and what it takes to be a great musician. Let's dive into it. How you doing?
Oh, good. Thank you for having me on the show.
No, it's my pleasure. Now, for the listeners who may not be familiar with your line of work yet, could you give us a quick rundown of who you are and what you do and why you do it?
Yeah, sure. I'm a producer and guitar player and writer, and I graduated from Musicians Institute in Hollywood. I got to work with a lot of great people out there. Came back to Michigan because this is home no matter what, and I got to be around family. I don't like being away from family, but I've worked with people that have been in that are in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, Funk Hall of Fame, R&B Hall of Fame, Musicians Hall of Fame. Written, produced, performed with different artists like that, and we've shared the stage at like Pine Knob and Freedom Hill with different national acts, and it just been very fortunate to have met a lot of great people through music. And I also volunteer on a bunch of boards and like the D-Man Foundation and Salute Our Warriors. And once I found out that just by playing music and helping with their music programs and things, I can change somebody's life or help in any way, it makes it way better playing music for that purpose than it does even for just recording an album,
Oh, I know. Music is so powerful in so many different ways. Now, who inspired you? Who inspired you the most to pick up the guitar?
Well, I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan at Meadowbrook, and that was really what blew me out of the water. And I remember it was him and James Cotton Blues Band was opening up for him. And we were sitting there in the lawn at Meadowbrook, and I was just going, man, this guy better be good. It was like bad weather. And he just came out, and again, I was just mesmerized. Then later that summer, I saw Robin Trower at Shane Park, and I saw Johnny Winter at Shane Park, and I was all in on guitar. And then once I really got into Hendrix, then that was it. That took it to a whole nother level. But that was the biggest. Really, that Stevie Ray Vaughan concert was what motivated me to get really, really into guitar seriously.
Now, how did your journey as a guitarist begin?
Well, it's funny because I had visited Musicians Institute in Hollywood a couple times. Now, mind you, I'm old. There was no internet and no cell phones back then. So there was no podcast back then. And I had basically decided that I wanted to head out there. I took my entrance exam and got accepted. Half the kids were from outside the United States. I mean, I met kids from like Greenland, Iceland, Finland, Japan, China. It was really just a phenomenal experience that was very unique to that school. And anytime a national act was off tour and they were in LA, they'd come to our school and they'd jam with the students. So I got to jam with like the rhythm section from Prince's band and From the Time and all these, cool bands that happened to, they were off tour and they'd stop in and play. There were just so many intangibles that you got from being in that environment. And then the head of the school, Howard Roberts, he was the founder and the owner of the school. He was part of the famous, the Wrecking Crew in Los Angeles that wrote all the huge hits and made all the theme songs for the television shows, and all the major artists you heard out there that you thought they were writing the music. It was actually the Wrecking Crew writing the music for them. I mean, they did music for like the Beach Boys and, Sonny and Cher and Joe Cocker and all these huge artists. There was actually their rhythm section laying all this stuff down for them. And then from there, once I graduated, I came back and decided, let me try putting a band. I did the usual, played in some cover bands and this and that, but I wasn't feeling it playing covers. I'm like, I know how to write, I know how to produce, and started my first band, Tower, and then we kind of went in different directions, me and the rest of the band. And then I started this band, Slight Return, in 1995. So it was, we were a three-piece. It was me, my best friend from second grade through life, Alberto Rosale, and a bass player, Mark Dabrowski. We released first couple albums. The second album, we took a song from Cypress Hill that was a rap song, and we just made it into like this banging rock song, which sounded like Rage Against the Machine. And then we got major labels 3 different major labels wanted to sign us, and 2 to 3 year deal, go on tour. But and of course, those contracts that own you, your likeness, your image, your music. But the biggest thing is my kids were young, and I'm like, I'm not going to miss these years. And these are the most important years in life. I'm not going on the road. So we get back in the studio for album number 3, and my friend, who was the drummer and singer, he started getting a cough in the studio. We thought he had pneumonia. Ends up having 4-stage cancer. So a few months later, he passed. So after the funeral, for about a year, I just kind of like quit playing. And then I started putting things back together again with different guys. And, just now some of the players I have in the band have been with us now for years. Revamped everything. And as soon as we got the next album out, all of a sudden we're getting invited to open up for national acts at, like I said, at Pine Knob and all these cool places, and did a bunch of shows with Robin Trower, and played like CCR, Tesla, Grand Funk Railroad, Huey Lewis, and a bunch of other bands. And we've just continued writing and performing. And then in 2014, I applied to the Recording Academy. I said, maybe I'll just be an associate member or something just to get involved. And I ended up getting accepted as a voting member of the Grammy Awards. And from there forward, I could vote and nominate. And we've had, over the last 8 years, over 30 songs on the first round ballot and 2 songs on the Latin ballot. Now, we haven't got a nomination yet, but we're on the ballot every year, that's difficult in itself.
Yeah, that's incredible.
Thank you. And just continuing my journey. We recorded with guys like George Clinton, and last year, Ted Nugent jumped on stage with us at the Salute Our Warriors event, helping the veterans out. And it's great. And the biggest compliment is that they always want to come back and do more with us. So that tells me that they actually enjoyed themselves, and I really like the band.
Yeah. When did you know you wanted to pursue music as a career?
It was back in like 88 when I kept thinking about going to music school. And I kept putting it off. And then finally in like 89, I applied. In 1990, I got in and went. Once I did it, because you couldn't go to that school if you weren't serious. You were in school 60 to 70 hours a week. And then we'd go back in the evening time for classes, clinics, seminars, and all that stuff. So they tried to get rid of, and the reason they pushed you that hard is they wanted to get rid of people that weren't serious. And also because Howard Roberts really loved education and believed a student can learn a tremendous amount of information in a small amount of time. So we learned 4 years of music theory within 6 months. We learned everything was accelerated, and you had to score high on your test or they wouldn't let you move on. But that was one of the great disciplines right there, just learning that amount of material in that short of time. And from there, if you go through that, you're serious about what you're doing. That's for sure.
Now, what did your family members think about you becoming a guitarist?
It was comical because, you're talking at 90. First of all, I'm Chaldean, which is Middle Eastern, which music is not an option. It's business. You got to be in business. We're known as business people. And so when I said, I'll see you guys later, I'm going to LA, they were like, hey, wait, what? Where are you going? And it ruffled a lot of feathers, but once my parents figured out, like, no, I'm really serious about doing this, they saw that I wasn't going out on weekends or nothing. All I did, if I had a day off, day off from work, I'd practice 12, 13, 14 hours straight. And they said, okay, pretty serious about this. And then once we did that, they got behind me, to follow what I believed in.
No, that's incredible how you have people that support you like that. Now, circle back to the Grammys. The Grammys are a huge deal. Now, how does someone become a Grammy voter?
Well, it's a little bit of a process. You have to, like when I applied, you had to have, I forgot how many albums, like at least 2 albums out that were current within the last year or two. You had to be the writer on the credits, and you had to scan the credits in. Your album had to be available worldwide for sale. So you had to have some type of distribution. And you had to have worked with somebody current in the industry. And there was a whole bunch of criteria. And then after, even if you have all the criteria from there, they put you in front of their board, and then the board votes whether you should be a voter or not. And then, I was fortunate that I had recorded with George Clinton and all these other guys, and they voted me in right away. So I was happy.
Now, what is the process like when voting for the Grammys?
Well, it's pretty interesting. It's there's what's called the first round. So the first round, the major labels and everybody, and myself included, will submit music to be considered to get on the ballot for the first round. So there's a bunch of criteria for that. So if you pass that, then it ends up on the first round ballot. First round ballot goes out, and then you basically fry your brain listening to so much material you can't take it. And then they whittle that down to the 5 nominees for the category. And then when we get to LA to the crypto.com center, then you find out who won. But I'll tell you stuff that people don't know about the Grammy Awards. There's actually 2 ceremonies. It's almost 8 hours long, the entire thing. You see the 3 hours on television, 3.5 hours. There's 4 hours before that where we're next door at the Peacock Theater. The first 82 awards are given out. And that's jazz, blues, rock, gospel, that type of thing. I mean, I was there when Greta Van Fleet won their Grammy for Black Smoke Rising. Joe Bonamassa did a phenomenal performance there this year because he was in contemporary blues. And I actually say that's the better part of the Grammys because there's all like the hardcore musicians that are at that part of it. And the house band has a full string section, a full horn section, grand piano, and like the top studio players in LA all playing in the house band. And then, my friends think it's only the part that they see when we walk next door and they see on TV with like all the pop culture artists and that type of thing. But I really wish they televised the other part so people could see there's more to it. But like I said, it's interesting seeing how, they come out. We get 2 special Billboard issues that are only sent to the voting members of the Academy. And, labels buy like advertisements for their artists. Like they'll buy the front and back of the book and full page ads and half page ads. And you'd be surprised how many artists spend a lot of money on that. So honestly, I don't use it at all because I don't want to be swayed in one direction or the other. I just want to listen to the music based on the quality of what it is. I don't care about about the ad they put in or any of that stuff. And you just try and vote as fair as be fair and try and pick whoever's got the best product.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people do not know what happens behind the scenes. Now, do you think the Grammy voting process is fair, or do you see room for improvement?
I mean, I think nothing can be 100% flawless, just because the thing about music people don't realize, or they do realize, but they seem not to accept, it's subjective. If I like Buddy Miles and you like Beyonce, neither one of us are wrong because there's no way to really gauge what's right. It's not like we're running a 100-yard dash and you're faster than me. There's a definitive way to decide that. I mean, it's subjective. So you're going to get times where people win and it's controversial because people feel like they shouldn't be in that category or people feel like the quality wasn't up to snuff or whatever it might be. But this is what happens in something that there's no definitive way of choosing.
I know you can't share too much, but what's one of the most exciting moments you've had as a Grammy voter?
It's fun to me going down there and then seeing my contacts, like my friend Kit Wakely won a Grammy this year and won a Grammy last year, and other friends of mine have won. I think it's more fun for me on kind of like the quieter level, where my friends are in like other categories, like whether it be world music or whether it be contemporary blues or Americana. I enjoy a lot of that stuff because I feel like it's a very earthy ground game type of playing field. And then when you get into the bigger categories, there's so much marketing behind that it's a little bit different to me. But I enjoy just meeting people down there that I've met, and I'm not a starstruck guy, so my kids will call me and go, "Dad, you're right by such and such." I'm like, "Yeah, I don't care." Doesn't matter to me, But it's all, like I said, I'm a people person. So I enjoy meeting people and networking and that kind of thing. So that's the fun of it for me.
Yeah, being part of something so big must be so incredible.
It is kind of weird the first time you go and you're like, man, it's kind of weird to be in the room with all these people that I see on TV or, like during the after party or whatever, there'll be like People Magazine there or TV shows and, stuff like that. And you just kind of walk by and kind of laugh a little bit about the hoopla and stuff and just keep walking,
Yeah, these people are just as you as me. We're just people.
I tell people all the time, like, people are people, man. I always joke. I say, hey, just remember during COVID, the important people were like the guys stocking shelves in the grocery stores and all the people, the first responders and stuff. These are the people who make the country go around. Entertainment's just, it's like it's like the icing on top of the cake, but the cake is built by, it's like kind of like football, right? A running back doesn't get a lot of yards unless the offensive linemen are blocking, but they don't get the glory,
So true. I mean, sometimes, there's big upsets. Have you ever been like surprised by a Grammy winner?
Yeah, there's been more than a few times that I'm surprised. Sometimes in a good way, sometimes not in a good way. But, again, it depends, and everybody listens to music differently. Everybody absorbs it differently. Like, I'm an old school rocker. So my angle on music is viewing it from the rock side, but then somebody who's in the pop culture, they're looking at a song that I might think is terrible, and they're going, oh my God, this is incredible, And to me, I'm like, well, wait a minute, there's no live instruments on here. I don't like this. I don't want to hear drum machine or auto-tune or any of that stuff. So it just depends on who's absorbing the music and how you feel about it, But I've definitely been surprised by more than a few times on wins. And more than a few times on people that I know that I thought had a shoe-in and lost.
Now, what advice would you give to an artist whose dream of winning a Grammy one day?
Well, I'd say, one thing like that if your goal should first always be just to create the highest quality music that you're proud of. Because at the end of the day, like me, I'm like, yeah, I would want a Grammy or any of that stuff. But every album I put out, I look at it like my legacy. So when I'm gone, my kids and grandkids can say, hey, that was grandpa or whatever. Maybe I'll inspire somebody even 2 generations out to go play music, And I understand also the importance of winning a Grammy, because the minute they say, oh, Grammy nominated artist or Grammy winning artist, all of a sudden your value goes up exponentially. If you're going to do that, I'd say maybe pick a category that's not as flooded. Like, our category is one of the most difficult because no rock bands have been brought up the ranks in probably 30 years. So we were in the category. So you our little name who nobody knows, Slight Return. I'm going up against the Beatles, AC/DC, Guns N' Roses, the Foo Fighters, Lenny Kravitz. We have no chance because where in the old days, like when I was growing up, whoever was the opening act for the big act was the next big act. For example, Van Halen opened for Kiss. You knew Van Halen was about to be huge, and they were. AC/DC opened for Kiss. Every time you saw that band, you knew they were coming up the ranks. But right now, rock and roll, nobody's come up the ranks. So whatever we submit, we're stuck up against guys that have been doing it for 30, 40 years. So my advice, if you want to win a Grammy, try and pick one of the categories that's not as flooded, whether it be like contemporary blues or that type of thing, and try and make your way in that way. You'll have a much, much better opportunity. And then once you get a nomination or a Grammy, you can go back to doing whatever you want, because that your value is up and it'll help you on the other side of what you do.
Yeah, winning a Grammy is a huge goal for so many musicians, and your insights will help them get there someday.
Yeah, I hope. It's not easy, but like I said, if they kind of take that route, that'll make it easier. Because if they're in pop or they're in like straight up rock, you got to remember, these guys are getting marketing from record companies, and and they're the old guard, the standby. It's going to be impossible to break into that. But if you pick some of the lesser categories, actually, there's some categories I'm a little confused on. Like, they have like best liner notes. I'm like, who gets a Grammy for best liner notes? And what qualifies something as best liner notes? I don't know. I'm not the expert on that. So there's some strange categories, that I see. But if you're looking for just the main, like best rock song, best rock album, that type of thing, I suggest kind of taking the route I was just mentioning.
Yeah, how many Grammys do they give out?
I believe they give out total, it's 82 in the first ceremony, and I think about 16 or so, they're probably almost close to 100 Grammys total. There's a lot of categories. And they're still missing some categories too. I'm Middle Eastern. I'm like, I don't play Middle Eastern music, but everything shouldn't be classified as global. There's a big Middle Eastern market, so those artists should get a chance. They have a big Hispanic, for Hispanic music, and a lot for like R&B and soul and stuff like that. But there's a couple of categories I think they could improve on. But overall, they do a pretty good job.
Now, how has the music industry changed since you started?
Oh my gosh, exponentially, not in a good way. Um, for example, like streaming royalties, like artists used to get physical sales on items, right? So somebody would create an album. The tour was to promote the album. Let's say the album sold for $15. Just let's say. Let's say the artist got $3, the label got 12. They'd sell, if they sold 1 million albums, the artist got 3 million, the label got 12 million, everybody's happy. And what they do is they send you out on tour, and the ticket prices were very reasonable. They'd send you out on tour so you could promote more album sales so you can collect residuals on physical sales. Well, now with streaming, I forgot what the number is. It's something ridiculous, like 7/1000ths of 1 cent on a stream. So you literally see guys like even like Weird Al Yankovic out there making videos saying, "Oh, I had 8 million streams of this song. I got $12.50. That's how bad the royalties are, and that's why ticket prices on concerts are insane now too, because the artist is not collecting any royalty money. And like before, the labels used to come in, and if they wanted an artist, they'd say, "Hey, we're going to give you a signing bonus, and we're going to give you whatever $2 million record deal." First of all, don't let $2 million record deal deceive you. That's not your money. That's called a loan. Only the signing bonus is your money. And then they track everything you do all the time you go to the studio, and they track all those expenses. And at the end, they hand you a bill, and that gets tacked onto the bill of what you already own. But when there was physical sales, you did have a chance of getting all the money back. But now with streaming, it's really difficult because it's either tour, hopefully you sell enough tickets to make money, because only the big artists are really selling every place out. Or, it's made it difficult. You got to get very creative. Also, when we first started, you just created the product, and then somebody would scout you and go, "Oh, we're going to sign you to a label and help you out." And they got the money to do everything. And you had managers and you had people doing your marketing. Now you're everything. You're your own manager. You got to do your own marketing. You do your own, there was no social media then, but you do social media. You do, everything from A to Z. A lot of artists spend more time having to do social media to keep their name relevant than actually playing music. It takes away from their, musicianship. But that's really the way the industry has changed. And, auto-tune and all these things that can make an artist out of an artist that's not really one. Drum machines and auto-tune and things I don't approve of, but, we're old school. We were brought up being really well rehearsed. We go in the studio, cut it live off the floor, and we record a lot of our albums on reel-to-reel, analog. So punching was, if your band wasn't ready, good luck punching things. So, and I know I sound like an old man talking this way, but I'm just telling the truth of how I've seen the industry change. Now, if streaming royalties turned around, I think there'd be so many artists that would be extremely happy. And I think they should, because if the guy who owns the company is taking home multi-billions, but all the artists that are on the platform are not getting anything, it seems like something's not right with it.
Now, do you think streaming has changed the way Grammy winners are chosen?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Because people sometimes to get your song in front of people, honestly, you have to be like you have to know how to like manipulate algorithms, right? So that, okay, this works, this doesn't work. Like now hashtags don't work, or now this doesn't work. And they have to figure out what it is that gets your name driven up in the algorithm. So when people search you, you're at the top of the list. And a lot of people pay for all that stuff. They're paying a lot of marketing monies to get their music to the top. And I guess I look at it like, if you're making money on it, it's one thing. But if you're just spending and not getting streaming royalties, I don't know how they justify it, but maybe they have some big financial backers or that type of thing.
Now, I need your insight here. Now, what do you think it takes to stand out as a musician today?
I think your marketing skills got to be outstanding. I think of course, you got to make, number one always is the art of making music that you believe in, great music. But how are people going to hear that music? You got to be a phenomenal marketer. You got to understand how the whole system works to get your music out there, because I mean, look how many bands are releasing music every single day around the world. Because before you couldn't record unless you went into a studio. Now everyone's got a laptop and they got an interface and they're recording at home. And music is just, the marketplace is flooded. So it's very difficult. I would say the one positive part, though, is if you have a style that's a little bit more of a niche kind of thing, like let's say you're into metal or like something that's a little more, where it has a smaller target audience. The good part about that is now with the internet, you can reach that audience worldwide. So that little sliver could be something big when you add it all up. So I'd say that's one positive about it. But yeah, it's difficult to be seen right now. That's for sure.
I mean, with so much talent out there, I mean, people just got to keep on chasing their dreams. I mean, what's one of the biggest lessons that you've learned in the music business?
I'd say don't be afraid to contact people. One awesome thing with the internet is that you don't have to call their agents anymore. Like some of them you do, if they're a big artist, yeah. But although no, I can't even say that because people laughed at me when I said I wanted to record with George Clinton. Well, I went on his Facebook page. I messaged the page, whoever was watching the page, and they basically laughed at me and said, well, we get tons of offers from national artists we don't record with. I would record with you. Then they came back and said, send us your music. We'd like to check it out. And then they came back with, we played it for George. He likes it. And then we ended up recording together and doing 2 videos together and everything else. You couldn't do that before. You'd have to go through, try and find the number to an agent and, and then they'll never return your call or whatever. Like now you can wiggle your way into stuff and get in with different artists without even, with direct messaging on social media, with, posting on somebody's fan page, all of a sudden somebody responds, it's like, it's pretty cool how you can contact people now.
No, indeed it is. I mean, just reach. I mean, try to get reach out to these people, and sometimes they'll reach back to you. And if you don't try, you never know.
Yeah, and sometimes they're looking for artists to work with. Like, believe it or not, sometimes they want to work with a young artist they never heard of because it looks good for them too. And you're thinking like, well, they don't want to record with me. They don't know who I am. But then you find out they're looking for people to work with.
Now, you've had an incredible career. Can you tell me about some of the artists you've worked with?
Yeah. So we talked about George Clinton from P-Funk. We, like I said, Ted Nugent, Billy Cox from Jimi Hendrix's band, the Gypsies, Peter Keys from Leonard Skinner, Derek St. Holmes from Ted Nugent's band, Glenn Lesh, Pete Thompson, and Davey Pattison, who played with Robin Trower, and a couple of them played with the Montrose and played with the Gamma. And, Dennis Coffey from the Motown Funk Brothers. I think who else? Oh, Henry Brown from the Experience Hendrix Tour. And just, thank God I've been blessed to work with a good amount of people, some great players and really nice guys in the industry.
Now, you're running an event coming up. For the listeners who may not be familiar, for who is Buddy Miles, can you dive into that?
Yeah, got the Buddy Miles shirt on right now. So Buddy was a legendary musician that played with first of all, he had an incredible solo career. He played with some of the biggest names in history: Jimi Hendrix, Santana, Stevie Ray Vaughan, Jeff Beck, Buddy Guy, Sly and the Family Stone, Greg Allman, Johnny Winter, Stephen Stills. I mean, the list is like insane. And I'm talking about as a drummer, one of the greatest drummers in history, one of the greatest rock vocalists and R&B vocalists, and as a incredible guitar player. A lot of people don't know the guy was like a crazy good guitar player. He toured with Santana, in fact, in the 80s, playing guitar and singing for Carlos. There was nights he was better than Carlos on stage. And so his career was basically shunned because he stood up to the industry moguls. And back then, you stand up to the big guys, guess what happens? They had control of the media and everything else, and they shut you down. But he had 12, 13 albums out. He was the voice of the California Raisins, the claymation. I know you're too young to remember that, but it was a claymation thing where, it was like a claymation. The Raisins were playing Motown stuff and that kind of thing. He was the voice of that and producer of that. Just did so much stuff. So we wanted to pay tribute to him. We did a show last year, the first annual we put together. 17 guys on stage at one time from around the country. And then this year, I think we might even have 19. We've even got at the end of the show, the Detroit Pershing high school choir coming on stage with us. And we're trying to give credit where credit's due to one of the greatest musicians in history that really, he fought the industry. And as people know, like I have an album out, one of my albums is called Corporate Pig. I don't like, the control in the industry from all, it's been going on for a long time. So I really, when I knew that Buddy on top of it stood up to these people, it made me even want to do this even more. And I'm with Boo O'Connor, who's in charge of the Buddy Miles Literary Trust. And we partnered on everything and put this thing together. And, thankfully we did it one year. It came out great. We got a Blu-ray coming out from last year's show, and we professional audio and Blu-ray, everything coming out. And we're going to record this year's show too. And we'll see where it goes.
Yeah, I mean, he was a legend, and I'm looking forward to see how it goes for you. And what has been your favorite collaboration so far in music?
I'd probably say George Clinton was the funnest, because it was just such a, George is such a character. And then, and it was great. Once we got in the studio, man, like he just went into producer mode, and I was just really enjoying seeing him, how he was kind of controlling the flow of everything and all that. And it was for 2 songs that were on my album, and he was super cool. When we shot the videos, he was all into it 100% doing his thing. And I just really, it was definitely a great time recording with him, and a surprise, because I really haven't seen any local bands or, like smaller bands that have ever recorded with George. So we feel very fortunate to have done that.
Yeah, I feel like you get behind the scenes, and a lot of musicians or a lot of characters, like you say. I mean, and you're behind the scenes. You get to see what they're all about, what they get to do, and basically fall in love with music all over again every time they step on stage.
Oh, absolutely. And I think one of the biggest advantages we have too is that my band, which is, me, William Pope on bass, Christian Van on guitar, Tony Mitchell on percussion, and Ronnie Carmo on drums. All of us are professional. We're very humble, quiet people, but we hold our own. And I think it makes a big difference that I'm not just a promoter calling guys to do stuff and saying, we're going to do this. We're actually the guys that are on stage with them. We're the guys holding down as the house band. We're the guys on stage. We all have been playing for decades. We're all, we know our instrument, but yet everyone's very kind, good people. And I think when they get in that atmosphere, they're very surprised, because music has a lot of difficult characters in it. And they're surprised when they get in with the band that has no, alternative motives or trying to pull anything on them or whatever. They're just very genuine, and let's make good music. I mean, look at the show. I got 19 guys this year coming in, and I'm like, if you guys think I'm making money on a show that has 19 guys on stage, that's not, obviously not. I would have brought 5 guys in. This is about promoting, obviously, the legacy of Buddy Miles, promoting the arts, supporting independent shows, and showing people that you can independently produce a show. There's not many. Everything is run by giant companies now. And even though it's a small show, we're very proud of it, and we put our heart and soul into it, and we hope it goes well on Saturday.
No, it's amazing to see what you're doing. And for me personally, Motown is such a huge part of music history. I mean, do you classify yourself as Motown?
My band, no, we're definitely rock. We're kind of a cross between like Hendrix meets Santana meets the Red Hot Chili Peppers kind of vibe, where we get funky and we get psychedelic, that kind of thing. But we have a dozen albums out ourselves, and we got a ton of original material, and our songs, like, you can hear our influences, but we have our own identity. So
I like that. Now, have you worked with any Motown artists?
Just Dennis Coffey from the Motown Funk Brothers. And Dennis was super cool. I got him on my Welcome to the D album. Very, very good guy.
Now, if you could work with any artist, dead or alive, who would it be?
I would definitely say Jimi Hendrix. I'd say 3. Jimi Hendrix, Stevie Ray Vaughan, and Buddy Miles. I'd love to work with those 3 guys. That would be the, just a huge deal. And of course, I wouldn't complain if I worked with Santana. Carlos would be incredible to jam with. That guy influenced me big time with his, melodic phrasing and that kind of stuff. But all these guys are just, amazing guitarists. The crazy part is how old everybody's getting in the industry. I wonder who's going to carry the torch for rock and roll moving forward. That's what's really going to be intriguing.
Yeah, I mean, who's next, really? I mean, who's coming? There's always got to be someone coming up next, and you
Out.
gotta. I don't know. A lot of people are going into this technology wave of AI. I hear Kanye West is gonna have some AI into his new album and stuff like that. It's like, we like the original stuff, but
And I like live players. I mean, all the guys on stage that we have, even at the show, like all these guys have spent decades perfecting their instrument, and it's just that's a real true art. So that's why I'm not really very hip to, they like, I'm not that I have anything against it, but it's not my cup of tea to have all the program stuff and a guy play one bar, copy it and paste it and quantize and all that stuff. It's not my thing. I like the human feel of letting stuff breathe and seeing in the studio how it goes when you're all playing live off the floor at the same time being recorded.
yeah, it gives you good energy when it's live music.
Well, yeah, and if you ever take any kind of drummer that has a swing to him and you try and quantize him, you ruin the sound. So that's why it's important for a drummer to be themselves and to, if they have some swing to them Buddy Miles laid a little bit behind the beat and just created the most killer pocket of all time. But, drum machines can't do that.
Now, what's one of the most unexpected opportunities you've had in the music industry?
I thought, recording with George was cool, but when he came back to do the music videos with us, that was even cooler because now I got video evidence of me and him on stage playing together. It was cool that he actually came back and did it. And I'd say too, the coolest moments was I recorded with Billy Cox from Jimi Hendrix's band, the Gypsies, and I had, that's an album that I annihilated playing. So when I got to the studio with Bill and Billy, and we were sitting there, and he started playing the bass line to a Machine Gun, I was like, "Wow, I can't believe I'm sitting right here and actually witnessing this and absorbing this and recording with him." And that was like a really, really special moment for me.
Yeah, sometimes the best experiences come out of nowhere.
Yeah, yeah, that was another one. I wanted him on the album. We did one cover of a Hendrix tune, and contacted the message a social media page. It was like a Thursday, and he said, "Well," and he ended up liking it and said, "Can you be in Nashville on Sunday?" And yeah, I'll be there. So, a few days later, we're recording together. It's just kind of weird. That was the biggest surprise of all. Like within a few days, I went from wishing you'd be on my album to sitting in the studio with him.
It's amazing how the music industry can do that.
Yeah, these days with technology, there are a lot more opportunities for artists to get in touch with others and get it done.
Now, for a listener who may not be familiar, what's the best part of performing live music?
The stuff that happens that you don't expect. Like there's bands that go out there and they play the same exact guitar solo or whatever every night. We're not like that. We're a band that improvises and jams. So whatever, I always tell my players in my band, if you're feeling it, go with it. Take an extra long solo, do whatever. It's a skill. That's an old school skill, improvising. And I think that's what makes live gigs so much fun. You don't know what's going to happen. Like you start playing, all of a sudden you can see the percussionist is feeling, he starts going with it, or I feel like I'm in the middle of a guitar solo and just feel like taking it out further or whatever. That's what attracted me to Jimi Hendrix. That's what attracted me to Santana and to Stevie Ray Vaughan. It was like, Jimmy, listen to Machine Gun, 7 different nights, 7 different versions, different length of time. One could be 13 minutes, one 7 minutes, one 9 minutes, different tempo. But that's really what made music exciting, is all that type of change. And that's what makes it exciting for me too. That's the funnest part about playing live.
Yeah, live music brings a different kind of energy.
Oh, absolutely. It brings something different out of you that you don't know what to expect. Sometimes you make mistakes and you're embarrassed, but sometimes you get lucky and you're like, wow, that was kind of cool,
Yeah, I mean, how do you prepare for a big performance?
Just, rehearse the tunes, but you really, on the improvising side, that's more of a skill that's acquired over the years, where you just jam over like a couple chord groove for like hours and you develop your improvisational skills. And then that you never really prepare for. It's like when you hit the stage, whatever the heck happens, but that's what makes it fun.
Yeah, have you ever had like a moment on stage that you didn't go as planned?
Oh yeah, there's always stuff. Because no matter how much you practice in rehearsal, you can't prepare, your rehearsal space, you're all comfortable and your sound is good. Then you get on stage, monitor stops working, your power is going out, your pedal board is sliding over, you can't hear yourself doing it. You can't hear your amp. You can't hear. There's always something, but I think after you experience every crazy thing, you start to go, okay, whatever. Oh, my amp's not working. Okay, good. I'll plug into the backup, or my monitor's off. I'll slide over and try and listen to the other guy's monitor or whatever. But it's just learning to adjust on the fly, because it's not like the studio where you can recut stuff or you got to, let's start over. Live, that don't work,
I mean, every musician has a funny or an unexpected performance story. I mean, I think that's just funny how you said because it's so true. I mean, in show business, nothing goes right, as planned, basically.
Oh, yeah, yeah. I remember the first big show we got. We were opening for Robin Trower, one of my guitar heroes of all time. And the place was jam-packed. And, it was what do you call them? General admission. So it was all standing room. They're all packed up against the stage. The main act's back line was so far up, we were standing on like the edge of the stage, almost in front of on the audience. And we get out to start the show. We're already nervous as hell. It's our first time playing with like a big act like that. And we get out there and the bass player's amp's not working. And we were just doing everything to stall him, giving the guy a percussion solo, this and that. Finally, about 3-4 minutes in, we got it to work, But I'm like, wow, what a way to start our first like real big gig, But what are you going to do? You just get it out of the way and learn how to deal with it on a professional level. And that's it,
So true. I mean, what's one of your favorite venues you ever performed at?
I think the funnest place to play was probably Pine Knob. I mean, we did we played there 3 times. And it's funny now that the venue is owned by, basically run by a conglomerate. They don't give local bands a chance to play anymore as an opener. But when Bill Davidson owned the Pistons and owned that place, it was great because they always wanted to get a local band to be the opener for a national. So we played 3 shows there, man. It was just, it's just great being on that big stage, and just, I've seen so many bands there, and just to be on the other side playing and looking out into the audience, it was great, man. That was a lot of fun. Hope we can do it again.
Yeah, I mean, Pine Knob, I always say if you play there, you've made it as a musician.
Oh, yeah. That's the place, man. Pine Knob, and we played at Freedom Hill and a bunch of other places, but I think that was my favorite one to be on that stage,
Now, I know every gig is not perfect. What's one of the worst venues you've ever performed at?
I'd probably say, can't remember if it was Newport Music Hall or the Orbit Room. Newport was a great venue, but because we were the opening band, we had to use the second dressing room. I think maybe it was the Orbit Room in Grand Rapids. I can't remember which one it was, but we go in, they go, your dressing room's on the second floor. Like, okay. So we go up to the second floor. It's a boiler room with a broken cooler. It's 100 degrees with a giant fan blowing and a chain link fence. We're like, no, where's the dressing room? Like, no, that's your dressing room. It was like on a Spinal Tap, So, those kind of things. But the venue itself was fine playing live, but it was just funny. Like, when you're not the main act, the way they treat the opener is like comical sometimes, but it's all, par for the course, man. It's like paying your dues. You start playing tiny venues where there's nobody. And, like in Detroit, the one everyone used to play at, it was actually in Hamtramck called Paychecks when we were growing up, which is ironically what you didn't get when you got played there. You didn't get no money. But yeah, like Paychecks and all these little clubs and stuff like that. And, hole in the wall places, and you 2 people there at the show watching you, but that's all part. Every big band you see on stage playing in front of tons of people had shows where there was the bar hands only watching them play. I'll guarantee you that.
Now, songwriting is such a personal thing. It's always interesting to hear how artists do it. I mean, how do you go about writing music?
For me, it's like sometimes I come up with the lyrics first and I put the music that matches the mood of that. Or sometimes I have a guitar riff and I'm like, okay, something got to work with this thing, And then I just record like a really bad version of it on my phone as an idea. And then we hash it out during rehearsal. And then once we got everything prepped and ready to go, then we head to the studio and knock it out. A lot of guys have a home studio and stuff like that, but that's a whole nother skill engineering a session. I'd rather just go to a place, let them do it, so I don't have to worry about spending so much, time and energy. And plus, I'd never be as good as these incredible engineers that are out there. I'm good at writing the music and producing, but let them do their job, because they're so good at it.
Yeah, protecting your work is important. I mean, how do you copyright your music?
It's funny because it used to be back in the day, they used to call it a poor man's copyright, where you take your cassette and you put it in an envelope and send it to yourself certified and sealed to prove that that was the date and time that you created something. Uh, if you don't want, the easiest way is go through the Library of Congress and you do it as a SR or sound recording. If you don't want to go through all that, another way just to make an easy way is you could take an MP3 of your idea and you could email it to yourself and save that email. This way it's got the song, it's got the date, the time, all this stuff and when you created it. Because copyright's really about having the evidence that you created on a particular date or time. And then you have to prove that if somebody infringed on it, how did they get access to it or were they exposed to it? But that's the easiest way. If people don't want to go through Library of Congress, just email it to yourself. And this way there's a date and time stamp on there.
That's really good insight. Thank you for sharing that. Now, what's one piece of advice you would give to like a young musician?
I would say, obviously, make the best music you can, but I would say learn as much about marketing as you can. Like guys like me that are older are not great at marketing and all the stuff that's out there, but the young people that are so smart with this stuff, that'll really help their music career more than anything. Cause you got to find a way to get seen and get heard. And they know how to tag everything and they know how to drive stuff up, because really it really is about being your own marketing machine now. And that's probably the most helpful skill you can have right now with music is knowing how to market what you've created.
Yeah, I mean, hearing from someone who's been through it all, I mean, it can be life-changing to a young artist.
Yeah, because I mean, just like us, right? I grew up like so focused on my craft that I forgot about, the marketing piece, because all I cared about just make the best music. If I make the best music, somebody's going to hear it, But really, that's not how it works. You have to get it in front of people. You can make the greatest song ever, but if it's not in front of the right people, nobody's going to even know it's out there. So that's the piece that I would definitely suggest focus on.
Now, what do you think is the key to longevity in the music industry?
Well, you got to be thick-skinned. That's the number one, because you're going to get a million rejections. That I'll tell you that right now. You just get used to it and go, okay, all right, next guy. But just look at it like a numbers game. The more people you meet, the more of a chance somebody's going to work with you or whatever. Don't get discouraged about, there's an old saying, don't let success get to your head and don't let failure get to your heart. You're going to have, when you do well, don't get a fat head. Don't get too excited about it. And if things go wrong, don't get too down about it. It's all like, oh, well, on to the next, because you got to work with people that are as excited about what you've created as you are. There's an old saying, you go where you're celebrated, not tolerated. So people that try and force somebody that's not really into what they're doing, you don't go to that person. You have to, the only way you'll be a success if you find somebody that's as excited about what you're doing and what you're creating as you are, because you're both going to, with the energy you get from both of you pushing that product, it'll become successful. But if you have somebody who's not really sure about your stuff and this and that, you're trying to force them to say, hey, you really need to like this. No, it's not going to work. They're tolerating you. They're not trying to get behind you on what you're doing.
Now, I'd love to know what's coming up for you in your journey. What do you have coming up?
Well, we're going to have that Blu-ray coming out from last year's show, which I've been producing that and getting the mix, all the audio mixes done. We got 54 tracks and that'll be coming out. Most likely we're going to get that on we're going to submit it for consideration for the Grammy Awards for Best Long Form music video for next year. Working on the next album coming out, which would be, I think, 13th album coming out. We got Salute Our Warriors coming up, which is going to be, it'll be at the Danny Kassa Estate in Rochester Hills. And we raised between Jack Huffman walking across the country as a veteran to raise money, and the event we put together, I think we raised around 300 and some thousand last year for the vets. And it all goes to Fallen and Wounded Soldiers Fund. So 97% of every dollar makes it to the families. And I believe, I don't want to jinx myself, but it's looking so far like Ted Nugent and Derek St. Holmes are going to join us on stage again. And we've got some other private events. And I'm also trying to finally wrap up the book that I wrote called Guitar Graduate. And it's like a comprehensive guide to becoming a professional guitar player. And then I'm also heading to Las Vegas next month. I won the third year in a row. I won Guitar Player of the Year by a UK magazine that covers independent artists across the U.S. And so I'll be heading to Caesar's Palace in Las Vegas to pick up my award in April.
Congratulations. I'm looking forward to seeing what's coming next for you. I
Thank you.
mean,
Thank you.
dreaming big also often leads to like great things. I mean, what's a dream project or collaboration that you love to make happen?
I'd love to play something with Santana. I think that'd be a great time. But I mean, Carlos he's high up the food chain, so that's a difficult one to get to work with. But um, I think who else had really a lot of the guys I love are gone. I'd love it if Jimi Hendrix and Stevie Ray Vaughan and Buddy Miles were still around. I'd be hitting every single person I can to get to them. But I'd say the Carlos would be the biggest one for me if I ever collaborated with Santana. That'd be something huge, or even some of the big, name artists that are out there now. I wouldn't mind doing something with, let's say, even Joe Bonamassa or one of those, the rock blues guys, that kind of thing.
Now, do you have any advice for musicians just trying to find their own sound?
Yeah, be persistent. I'd say spend as many hours as you don't waste time. If you're really serious about your craft, don't waste your time going to bars. Don't waste your time, like the biggest thing is don't waste time. Have a structured practice routine, and also make sure it's not just about chops. Make sure you practice your songwriting, as far as like arranging, songwriting, lyrics, production, like work the whole gamut. Keep your guitar on a stand by you at all times, because if it's in the case, you're not going to open the case. Leave it on the stand in the family room. Every minute you get, grab it and record. Always have your phone ready and record ideas, because you're going to go back and go, oh man, that's kind of cool. I thought that was cool then, but it's not now. But record different, because all of a sudden, 2-3 years later, you go through your phone, you're like, man, that's a cool riff. I think I can use that for something I wrote. And then all of a sudden, boom, it winds up on an album. Could be a couple, 2-3 years later or whatever. And don't get discouraged, because, again, this is an industry of no's. See, the thing about life in general, people generally try and teach you more about what your limitations are, not your potential. And you got to remember, you have way more potential than anybody boxes you in with. And that's a big deal, because everyone, I can't do that. Yes, you can. You want to record with somebody, go try and contact them. Sometimes you don't even know you're a couple of people away from it. Don't give up on that stuff.
Yeah, finding your unique style is key. Your advice could really help someone. I really appreciate you sharing that. And now, what's one thing you want to be remembered by for the music industry?
I'd like to be just remembered that I was very straightforward, wore my heart on my sleeve. I'm not a guy who what you see is what you get. I'm not a guy who I just like to be straight about everything and very transparent. If I like something or don't like something or whatever it might be, I just feel like I'd like to be known as a hard worker. I like to get stuff done. I like to be persistent and accomplish what I can. And really it's about doing it the honest way, not harming nobody. The whole thing is not to hurt anybody along the way, and do the best you can.
No, that's great insight. Now fans make everything possible. I know that. Now, how important is fan support in your career?
I guess fan support is everything. That's why people use things like Twitch and all the other stuff. That's another thing these young artists can use is, all these things where they're sponsored and they create music and people pay them to create music. None of that stuff was available when we were growing up. So you might as well take advantage of all these cool things that are available. And that's how they gain so many fans, like you're talking about. Like one of my nephews, one of the biggest gamers in the world, King George. And people on Twitch paying to watch him play and every day, and they fly him around the world and all kinds of stuff. But very smart marketer. He knew how to get his brand out there, and now he's one of the biggest in the world.
That's incredible. Now, what's a fun fact about you that most people don't know?
That I'm Middle Eastern. I'm Chaldean. So a lot of people think they don't know that. Like I said, I speak Chaldean. I understand Chaldean, which is Aramaic, which is like Jesus' language that was in the Passion of Christ and stuff like that. That's one thing they definitely don't realize, because I don't think there's one Chaldean guy that's in the rock and roll business as it is. I think what else really that's a funny, I don't know, that I like. I've grown up in the grocery business. I love stocking shelves, doing stuff like that. It's always good to be on the ground doing things and be very earthy. And I've always enjoyed that kind of stuff, working in the grocery store and all that when I was growing up as a kid. And I like doing anything that's, physical labor, all that stuff. I love doing it, it's the stuff. Yeah. It's the stuff where I'm like stuck in front of the computer doing that kind of stuff that sometimes makes my head spin.
Yeah. I mean, everyone loves to learn something new or surprising about their favorite artists,
Yeah. Yeah. It's always like fun facts. Like I know Ronnie James Dio was a pharmacist. He went to pharmacy school, and some comedians that used to be like vinyl siding salesmen, and stuff like that, like Rodney Dangerfield. And you find out these fun facts, but the fact of the matter is everybody just started out doing a day job and doing the night thing of doing what they did, whether it's comedy, music, art, or whatever. And then eventually the scales were like this, where their day job was this, and then they started getting better at what they did, and then it went like this,
So true. Now, all your stuff will be in the description down below, but where can people follow you and support your music?
If you go to slightreturn.com, you can check out the website, and there's a ton of background information and stuff there. Or we got a YouTube channel, Slight Return USA, and social media, Slight Return USA on Instagram, and then you'll see Mark Slight Return Kassa and a Slight Return USA on Facebook, and the usual outlets for stuff. I do have a TikTok thing. Sometimes I'll post stuff on TikTok or whatever, but I do what I can do, man. It's so much that you got to do for social media. It's like insane, man. Like burns up your whole day trying to get that done,
No, so true. I know exactly what you mean. Mark, this has been an awesome conversation. Thank you so much for being on the show.
No, thank you for having me, man. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I mean, your journey in the music industry is truly inspiring. I know the listeners will love hearing about your story.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate it. If I can inspire somebody else to go out and do something, that's what I'm happy about. There's nothing better than seeing somebody, get motivated by something they've seen, or just like I got motivated when I saw Stevie Ray Vaughan.
Yeah, so true. I mean, thank you for sharing your experiences, and I can't wait to see what's next for you.
Oh, thank you. Thank you.
And to the listeners, go to the description down below and go to our store if you want to help support us. And this is Every Day is Friday, Podcast 365. Until next time, everybody. Thank you.